What a week. What a week in politics, in law, in Jamaica. There is hardly any breathing room with the volume of matters coming to our attention, and matters which seem to be asking for immediate conclusions. I try not to fall for those because sometimes things just have to be allowed to simmer, and the appropriate bodies have to do what the appropriate bodies have to do. But I will touch on a couple of things in my views this morning. First thing is, we now have sight of this application for permission to apply for judicial review, which has been brought by Andrew Holness, the Prime Minister of Jamaica, as well as 3 companies which are all mentioned, referred in some aspects to various entities based on the Integrity Commission report, which has been tabled in Parliament. The respondents, as you know, to that application for permission to apply for judicial review: Craig Beresford, Kevon Stevenson, and the Integrity Commission. So there are the Director of Information and Complaints and the Director of Investigation at the Integrity Commission, plus the Commission itself. And it is my understanding, based on how the law has been structured, that all of these directors within the Integrity Commission have defined statutory roles, and therefore that may be the basis on which each of these is listed as a respondent to the claim, in addition to the Integrity Commission itself. I begin firstly from the point that, having read the Integrity Commission report, and long before this action was filed, I expressed some concerns about the procedures used by the various directors and the Integrity Commission previous to and including the tabling of the report. To that extent, I am quite happy that an application has been brought. Never mind that it is brought by the Prime Minister, and politically it does appear to be a very strange application to be coming from the person who sort of heads the legislative arm of government. He certainly heads the executive, and he's an integral member of the legislative arm of government. So the question is being legitimately pondered as to how and why is a member of the legislature seeking to challenge and to have declared provisions of a law that he voted on. It cannot be said that he passed it. He voted on it, and other members of his party and others perhaps of the opposition, because we don't even have a history of keeping tab of who voted on what. But the procedure by which bills become laws, it is such that a sufficient majority is required depending on the nature of the bill in both houses of Parliament, and then the Governor General has to give his assent. Interestingly, did I hear a whisper recently about a refusal to at least initially, to assent to something? I believe I did, and I need to follow up with that particular matter and see where it's at now. Yeah, but I digress, and at the appropriate time, I will remind myself and remind you of the genesis of this position, that irrespective of the holder of the position of king or queen, that individual must assent to bills that have been sent from the House of Parliament. It's not part of our history, meaning Jamaica, but it is part of UK, England history, which is what we inherited. But I'll come back to that. So, yes, it does look a bit sort of at askance as to how and why is the Prime Minister seeking to challenge the Integrity Commission in the ways he has in this application for permission, when they are on record as saying they are in the fight, the anti-corruption fight, and they wish to do all that needs to be done and to empower the Commission to have the wherewithal to do the investigations that are necessary. But then I remind myself, the Prime Minister, even though he is the Prime Minister, he is not to be stripped of any of the rights guaranteed to any person under the Jamaican Constitution. And one of the rights is that if you believe and you allege that any of the provisions of the Charter of Fundamental Rights is or has been contravened in relation to that individual, irrespective of the office, without prejudice to any other action and any other law, you can apply for redress under the Constitution. And where public authorities are concerned, such as the Integrity Commission and the directors that are named to operate under the Commission, if you believe that the manner in which they carried out their work is of such a nature that the issues of fairness, impartiality, procedural irregularity, a doctrine they call Wensbury unreasonableness, and all of those matters that come within an application for leave for judicial review, the Prime Minister is an individual who can and who should apply, especially with a case of this nature where so many issues have been raised about the investigation, particularly surrounding him. Yes, so what I understand from this, and it is a very... the application is interesting in many ways. And there are many sort of restricting phrases in the various declarations that are sought. So, for example, where it's seeking what it says is a declaration striking down, I don't think I'd put declaration striking down, because from my understanding as to how the various branches of government operate, if the Supreme Court or any other court declares something to be the position, then other branches of government must act. So a mere declaration within the context of a judicial review is sufficient for whatever is declared to be acted on by the other agencies of government. So, for example, if the court declares that a particular section is unconstitutional because it breaches, say, the presumption of innocence, for example, then they don't need to move on to strike down, certainly not in the judicial review application, but the legislative authority will need to make the amendments thereafter to have it conform with the declaration granted by the court. But I was going back to the declaration where what it seems to me that the Prime Minister through the paper file is complaining about is exactly how things have operated within the context of the investigation that was launched against him. And it is my hope that we can have some guidance as to how the thing perhaps should operate. I don't know if it can legitimately come in this particular action, but all of the declarations that are sought by the filing, when you look at how the declarations are grounded, one can see that the attorney is taking issue with the actions of particular individual in this specific investigation.